Hey, what's going on, guys? Jerome Gaming here, back with another video. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about some of the best bot lane ADCs to play this season. We are currently on patch 15.3, so this list is going to be aggregated based off the data in that specific patch. And this guide is going to try to focus on more of the meta picks right now, not necessarily the off-meta picks. So what has a high win rate as well as a high pick rate. Starting out with number 4 on our list, that is going to be Twitch. So Twitch is currently sitting at a 51.3% win rate and a pretty decent pick rate of 6.3% in Gold Plus. And as probably most of us know, Twitch is going to be based on the element of surprise. So he can pretty much outtrade anybody if he can surprise them with his stealth, his Q. In early game, Twitch does really rely on his abilities to do a lot of trading. So his Q into his E is normally a pretty decent trade in lane. Unfortunately, though, Twitch probably is one of the weaker early game champions, especially on this list, and he will kind of scale as the game does go on. So early game, you do want to be playing pretty safe. You really don't want to be trading, to be honest, unless you and your support are on the same page and you're going for some sort of an all-in. But if you do trade early, make sure it is an extended trade more than anything, as you are going to benefit from that additional poison damage. Now, where Twitch really shines is in his team fighting ability by being able to spread that poison out and using his ultimate on top of grouped enemies. His ultimate is going to allow him to shoot those piercing bolts, and you can quickly spread that poison to a whole bunch of people and then execute them with your E ability. And Twitch is going to be pretty good with 2 items. So that's going to be the Collector as well as Runan's Hurricane. The Hurricane is going to allow him to, of course, spread his poison. It's also going to give him some of that much needed wave clear early. And of course, the Collector is going to help with executing those low health enemies with your poison. It also does an excellent job at helping you scale if you are able to get those kills by giving you that bonus gold. So Twitch is going to be pretty strong with all-in support. So something like a Taric or a Braum. So they are all in. They do kind of provide some CC for you as well, some tankiness for you, some control. And they also will allow you to disengage as well if you really want to. So Braum ult, allows you to go in and disengage if needed. Same thing with Taric ult. Something like Lulu is also really good with Twitch, especially if you're against like an assassin comp. All the additional bonus health and shielding that she's going to get you is going to allow you to get 3 or 4 more autos in a team fight. It might also just completely save your life as well, and that can really change a late game team fight. For his runes will be going lethal tempo for that additional attack speed to attack your poisons faster. And for that late game scaling, you'll be going into the sorcery tree with Axiom Arcanist as well as Gathering Storm. Up next on our list is going to be Vayne. So Vayne's sitting at a 52.2% win rate with a even higher pick rate than Twitch at 9.6%. And she's going to have a very similar story to Twitch. She's not going to be the best early game, but of course, once you do get a couple items on her, she's going to scale like crazy. And then Vayne's probably going to be the best ADC in the game for melting tanks. She doesn't do a ton of spread AoE damage like Twitch. She kind of funnels all that damage into one specific target with her silver bolts. And one thing that she has that Twitch doesn't have is a ton of mobility. So Vayne doesn't quite rely on a support outside of lane quite as much as Twitch does. Now, of course, in lane, that's a completely different story. But outside of lane, Vayne can kind of fend for herself a little bit. And it makes her an extremely, extremely good duelist, especially if somebody kind of surprises you. Vayne doesn't require the element of surprise to do good. So it's easier for Vayne to turn a bad situation into a good situation late game. Now, one of the weaknesses of Vayne is she's kind of hard to play, especially if you have like a bunch of minions around whatever target you're trying to attack. If you accidentally misclick on one of those minions, it's going to reset your silver bolts and you're not going to get that true damage proc. So I'd argue that Vayne probably has one of the higher skill ceilings of any champions on this list. So we did talk about core items earlier. So that's going to be Blade of the Rune King and a Rage Blade. That's going to give you that on-hit damage, as well as that health percentage bonus physical damage. And she'll be another champion that is running lethal tempo as well, again for more attack speed, for more silver bolt procs. And then she'll actually be running the resolve tree with conditioning and overgrowth, because she does have a more difficult time getting out of lane than Twitch. She doesn't have as good of a trade, and a lot of that is due to her limited range. So Vayne's going to be good with any sort of champions that can allow her to sustain in lane. So something like a Soraka. Again, we're going to see Lulu on this list a few times. Anybody who can keep her alive and just allow her to auto attack. She's also pretty good with something like Sona. So does pretty good passive healing, and she also allows a good opportunity to engage with Sona's ultimate. So again, Sona can ultimate an enemy player, and then Vayne can roll in and condemn them into a wall. And that's a pretty good combo, pretty much going to secure a kill if you can do that. It's a little bit easier to pull that combo off with something like a Sona than something like a Braum or a Dark, because Sona has all that range on her ultimate. And it's also a little bit more difficult to react to, so you can kind of get a little cheesy combo between these two. Up next on our list is going to be Jinx, sitting at a 51.85% win rate in Gold Plus and a whopping 22.9% pick rate. So if you notice, there's kind of a consistent theme going on here, and this is going to be ADCs that scale well into the late game and can handle tanks. So we are currently in a tank meta at the moment, so just naturally champions like this, champions that have a ton of attack speed, can really shred tanks late game, are going to be making our list. So if the previous two champions had range limitations, Jinx is one of the champions on this list that does not really run into those range limitations quite as much, and she actually does a little bit better in the early game compared to Vayne and Twitch. So we would consider her early game to be average, and a lot of that is due to her Q ability, where she can switch between her minigun as well as her rockets, and those rockets allow her to kind of play safe again in lane. And she also just has a little bit better laning kit than those two champions as well. She has her W, Zap, and then she also has her E ability, Flame Choppers. So it can be a little bit easier to cheese an early kill on her and kind of start that snowballing process. So Jinx is going to be really good with champions that can all in, and then Jinx can kind of snipe them down with her ultimate, allowing her to snowball. So something like an Annie or something like a Fiddlesticks who can kind of all in. They do a whole bunch of damage on the front line, and then Jinx can kind of stay back safe and kind of snipe them down with her rockets. Now, that being said, she's also pretty good with something like a Braum or a Tark as well. Champions that can land an easy stun and then allow her to drop her traps right on top of them, allowing for that chain CC stun, and then of course getting a quick and easy kill. In terms of runes for Jinx, it's going to be the same old song and dance that we've seen so far. It's going to be Lethal Tempo into Gathering Storm, and then she'll actually be taking Absolute Focus for a little bit of that adaptive bonus as she scales into the late game. In terms of items, she'll be running the Wild Arrows along with IE, and Jinx is going to be a champion that scales really well with critical strike chance. And she does really good against squishy targets due to this, because all that critical strike chance, just 2 or 3 rockets late game, is going to take them out. And then she also, again, has that really long range, so she's kind of hard to get to as well. So it's almost like she's just sending out these mini nukes late game that is just supercharged by her high crit chance, crit damage. And then, of course, she can go into something like a Lord Dominik's Regards for that additional armor penetration to help handle the tanks. And then the number 1 pick on our list is actually going to be Miss Fortune, coming in at 52.1% win rate in Gold Plus at a 16.8% win rate. Miss Fortune, in our opinion, is one of the strongest ADCs in the game right now. And one thing that's different about Miss Fortune than the other ADCs on this list is she's actually pretty good early game, she's pretty good mid game, and then she does fall off slightly in the late game, especially if you do mess up your ultimate. So if you're looking for a champion to kind of get you through that early game and also does pretty good in the tank meta, well, Miss Fortune will hopefully fit that bill. So early game Miss Fortune is actually a lane bully, and a lot of that is due to her Q and to her E. They're both very easy to get off. Her E is a point and click. It applies a slow, and that allows you to get into range through your high passive movement speed, and then just get off a free Q. And this is really important because as you do go through lane, you want to kind of dwindle the opponent down so that when you do hit level 6, you can immediately all in with her ultimate. So her ultimate is going to be like a channel effect. It's going to shoot out a big barrage of bullets and a cone in front of her, and it simply does damage over time. The longer they stand in that ultimate, the more damage you're going to take. So this means she's going to do really good with supports that can hold people in place. So something that you probably weren't expecting, but she's really good with champions like Amumu and Maokai. If you can just quite simply hold somebody in place for about 2 seconds, they are dead against Miss Fortune, especially in the laning phase. Another tip for dwindling enemies down is you can bounce your Q ability off minions. It does not have to execute the minion to get the bounce, they just have to be lined up against the minion, and you'll get that bounce effect, which will do a whole bunch of damage. In terms of your core items that you really want to focus on, Miss Fortune is really big around movement speed. A lot of that's going to be due to the synergy with her W ability Strut, where she gets that passive movement speed, which can, of course, be funneled into a bunch of burst single target damage when needed, which is why she's pretty good in this current meta against tanks. So again, you're going to be going Ghost Blade, you're going to be going Boots of Swiftness, and then the Collector for your 3 core items. The Collector, of course, going to help you secure kills in lane and kind of help that snowball process again. Then in terms of runes, she's going to be going First Strike, and all of that is due to her ultimate. You'll be able to get a whole bunch of bonus damage off with your ultimate, and all that bonus damage will then be funneled into gold. She's a little bit more mana hungry in lane as well, so you'll be taking something like a Mana Flow Band, especially if you are using your E ability a lot due to the fact that it costs twice as much mana as your Q ability. And then like most other ADCs on this list, she'll be taking Gathering Storm for that increased damage late game. All right, guys, that's going to be the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. We'll see you on the next one.